Perhaps the most profound realization of the Aston Martin Valhalla is its position within the market. With Ferrari announcing the F80 and McLaren launching the W1, and no word from Porsche on Mission X, the only true offering of a new Holy Trinity right now includes the Valhalla. Understandably, you'd perhaps question the notion, but we're about to find out why.
So here we finally are.
Yes.
I want to say finally, it's amazing to stand in front of production-ready Valhalla.
Yeah.
It's a serious way to end the year, isn't it?
Yeah, big moment. It's been a long time coming. The car's been around for a number of years, but yeah, it's an incredible moment and a big way to end the year and go into 25.
I think I say this most times that I stand next to you, but God, it looks good.
Yeah,
it looks really good.
We've overhauled the core range, and obviously there's a design language to front engine sports cars, but this has been a real license to bring different dynamics, also bring down from Valkyrie, but yeah, it's unmistakably still an Aston despite the technical content.
And when I say it looks good, it's not that we haven't been familiar with the overall profile and aesthetic of Valhalla, but there's something about a production-ready surface and intent that just puts that finishing touch that makes it real.
Yes.
And
yeah,
in real
absolutely.
guys, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and you start to see the detail and how hard it is to integrate those forms, you know, full carbon fiber body, so you can work really intricately with the forms, but you're right, in production detail, you start to see all the panel lines come in and the way they work together, so it is a thing of beauty.
You may argue that the Valkyrie, or even a Jesko, or even a Tourbillon would be a better placed car in the Holy Trinity. But truthfully, the game has moved on, with the aforementioned sitting totally in their own bracket of megacar. So here we are, a decade after the original Trinity lineup, with an Aston Martin in full contention. I mean, who'd have thought it?
So come on, let's talk about what's going on under there. First of all, I love that you managed to maintain these top exit exhausts. I thought that was a thing of the past, actually. But
yeah,
that's
top
great
exit,
news.
very difficult because you've got a hot V.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of work gone on in there. But for sound and for visual drama, we really wanted to go for that. Obviously, it's a quad exhaust system.
Yes.
So 2 on the top and then 2 further down, just inside the diffuser. So it's a big exhaust system, but lots of good sound at both high and low RPM and speed. When
you say visual drama, are we expecting some flames here, or are you just saying it looks cool up there? You can't possibly pass comment, can you?
Clearly, but no, I mean, there's. Yeah, I mean, clearly in race mode and so on, we've got the way the gearbox cuts through each gear. You do get some blowback on it, which is pretty exciting. Brilliant.
So the engine then, obviously the sort of top line feedback was, oh, it's an AMG Black Series engine, but it's not really, is it? You've enhanced it a lot.
Yeah, so this engine's been in development for over 3 years itself. So it's a flat plane crank. It's over 30% modified with components, new exhaust, crankcase, the way the engine breathes, the way the electronics are integrated and so on. It's going to be completely overhauled. It's obviously up to date with new emission standards and everything else. So the way it performs, but also the way it has to act for us in the car is completely different. So we've had a drivetrain program in parallel to the vehicle program itself.
For 3 years?
Yes.
So it isn't a crate engine by any means. This is a totally bespoke platform for this car.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. And music to my ears, and my audience knows I'm a bit of a gearbox snob, twin clutch box.
For the first time.
This is sensational news.
So it is, and I think, you know, one of the roles of Valhalla in the range is to develop technology that we can pull through the range over time. Clearly, one of the major milestones here is a bespoke dual clutch gearbox. So again, designed for this car, but open to applications in the future.
Right.
So yeah, it brings us, you know, also with the integrated e-motor within the box as well. So it's future-proof for performance hybrid applications.
Okay, so just touching on the hybrid integration then, it is obviously massively dominated by the engine first and foremost.
Yes.
So and when I say most of the power, it's the most powerful V8 you've ever put in a car, right?
So yeah, 828 PS off of the V8 alone, which would ordinarily be a massive number. Clearly, it's actually a little bit north of not far off where the new V12 is in Vanquish on its own.
Which is mad.
Which is mad.
Right.
And then obviously augmented with the e-motor system on top. Giving us 1079 PS total combined system at peak.
So it'll be over 1,000 horsepower.
Yep.
And ballpark weight?
So 1655 kilogram dry.
Okay, it'll be swift then.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good power to rate ratio. Clearly, there's a
Yeah.
lot of technology on the car, the hybrid system and so on. So we've worked hard to combat mass throughout the car to give it a really, really good competitive curb weight.
So in terms of hybrid application then, you've got motor integrated into the gearbox.
Yep, on the rear.
And then you've got 2 on the front axles.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So clearly not connected. So all-wheel drive, but obviously with no mechanical connection between the two.
Yep.
Twin front e-motor on the front axle and integrated into the gearbox on the rear.
Okay. And so how does the hybrid assist it? Is it traction off the line, traction out of exit of corners? Is it on all the time, or is it splitting?
Yes, so there's an integrated dynamic system which controls all of that, as you would expect. The primary at the front e-motors is obviously we can do torque vectoring,
Right.
Which is really exciting from a handling perspective. So
Yeah.
corner exit, high-speed cornering, launch. The estimated launch is 2.5 seconds to 60. So
Crikey.
that would utilise the front. But overall, we wanted a really pure feel to the car. So the primary balance is to the rear axle. So you'll feel a kind of rear drive car that when called upon can give you the kind of security in all conditions that the front e-motors can add as well. The primary focus is not to sort of anodise and anaesthetise the steering feel. If you use too much of the e-motors on the front axle, you start to feel like the car's doing it for you.
Right.
And you're not driving it on the throttle. If you look at the way we've tuned all our front engine sports cars recently, there's a real delicacy to the way the front end pitches in, and then you can drive it on the throttle using the power at the rear axle. And we wanted that feel in this car as well. The output really is that it's more fun at low speed, because clearly you build hugely capable cars.
Yeah.
They've got to be fun at all speeds, and I think that's really a part of the Aston driving DNA at the moment.
So would I be right in thinking that this is technically Aston's first front-wheel drive car? In certain modes?
In certain modes, yeah. So in pure EV mode,
Yeah.
it will run off front e-drive. So yeah, technically.
So if you want to wake up early and not annoy the neighbours
Exactly.
and sneak out of town,
Yes.
front-wheel drive,
Absolutely.
Aston Martin.
And reversing.
Okay, so reverse is also off the E-gear.
E-reverse, yeah. So no
Okay.
reverse gear in the car.
Very trick. Speaking of front-end turn-in, the push rod suspension, that is so trick.
Yeah.
It's so trick actually being able to see it as well, like
Exactly.
that.
Super cool. We wanted to bring that kind of technical jewelry to the A surface as well, which is why we've opened up this carbon panel as well, so you can see the inboard, the push rod suspension. Reduces a little bit the sort of the mass, the sprung mass at the wheel, so you bring the mass into the center of the car. That helps with handling. It's a really beautiful feel behind the wheel. It's obviously technology taken from Formula One.
Speaking of F1, have you learnt from your sort of cohort in F1, and has there been any learnings as well from Valkyrie, of course?
Yeah, I mean, massively so.
Yeah.
So not just learnings, but directly working with. So AMPT, who are the performance arm of the F1 team. So they've developed the tub itself and lots of other control mechanisms on the car. So, and then together with that, the Formula One team have worked with AMPT and us in, again, some of those control systems, how we work with active aero and torque vectoring. So that's the first time really in the market we've seen a combination of active aero and torque vectoring. So this is kind of all new technology right at the leading edge of kind of supercars at the moment.
So just on the topic of aero, I mean, this is some serious hydraulics here.
Yeah.
That is a serious wing.
Yes.
So what sort of aero figures are we talking here? Because it's, I mean, you can tell just by looking at it that it's very form follows function, but also this wing comes out of nowhere. It's huge.
Yes. So when it's in its recessed position, it's completely integrated in the body, and that's part of the Aston design language. If you look at our front engine sports cars, we do all the aero integrators, so you don't see cutouts and wings. It's part of our design language. We wanted to continue that with Valhalla, but clearly you've got massive amount of downforce that you want to call upon. So the wing is active, as you can see, 600 kilos of downforce from about 250 kph. And then we maintain that up to the 350 VMAX. It's bleeding off aero as the speed increases. And in tandem, you've got active aero in the front of the car, ahead of the wheels, in behind the radiator grille, which is also balancing the front and rear downforce. So it's not just about peak downforce, it's about how early you can access it in the speed. You know, realistically, you're getting downforce on, let's say, high-speed road corners as well.
Usable speeds.
Yes, as well as then on track. You don't have to be doing 250 kph. It's about that balance between stability in road conditions, but then extreme performance on the track.
It's amazing seeing, and we'll touch on tyres shortly, but I mean, the aero sculpture. I remember when the concept of this launched, I mean, it had a massive, like, Venturi tunnel. I would say it's got even more aggressive since then, hasn't it?
Yeah, the underside of the car is critical in that 600 kilogram figure. The Venturi tunnels are huge, and clearly lessons also from Valkyrie in that the cutouts through to the rear to draw air through. Yeah, it's pretty wild, but it's necessary when dealing with this kind of level of power and cornering forces. Ultimately, when we want to put it into high-speed corners.
The other two exhausts, they're not placed for it to be a blown, are they? That's just the fastest way to use air?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's throughout the program, we've tried to obviously, to getting 828 out of the ice is to reduce back pressure on the system. So, but you want to maintain a blend of that performance and kind of sonorous qualities as well. So having the top exit gives you clearly a more direct sound, particularly at lower speeds.
Okay, and this tops out at 7,000, does it?
7,000 RPM, 1,100 Newton meters of torque. It's a high torque setup. Both the engine combined with the e-motor system. What that means, in addition to the way the battery cell is set up, is that we're accessing all of that performance more of the time in the throttle position. So it's not a car that you have to wring its neck out to access it. And also the battery temperature is very strongly regulated. So it's a liquid cooled cells.
Right.
And the idea is it can draw energy in and deploy it very quickly and repeatedly. So you don't have kind of hot spells in the car where it's less efficient.
So huge amount of torque. So out of corners then with that all-wheel drive, it'll just slingshot.
Exactly.
This thing.
Yeah.
And have you had to develop the tyres specifically to the car to deal with that torque?
Yeah, so it's this is the Michelin Pilot Sport S5, but with a new application for Valhalla specifically. So it's got our logo on the tyre, as you would expect. Additionally, on the magnesium option wheel, there is a Cut 2 tyre as well, which is a little bit stickier, less flexible in terms of seasonal response.
And is that specific to that magnesium lightweight, or is there is that part of a sports pack, as it were?
It's a package, yeah. Right. So you reduce the unsprung mass by 12 kilograms across the car with that wheel, which is useful when it's unsprung, so you feel the difference, particularly if you're using it in track conditions, or particularly summer roads, high attack, very sticky tyre.
I'm assuming there's active aero at the front as well as that, to balance out that colossal thing.
Yeah. So, and again, that's integrated. So, kind of typically, it's got the Aston grille, but in behind here there are two large aero flaps on active axles either side that can adjust for downforce depending on what the rear of the car's doing and depending on what the rest of the suspension's doing, which mode we're in.
It's just a stunning thing, isn't it? It's so cool.
A lot of detail.
So I'm assuming this is actually a functional scoop.
Yes. So air comes in, is then split 3 ways. So we have intake, and then we pass air into the engine for cooling across the top of the hot V, and then into the air-to-air cooling chargers. So yeah, it's a very technical and integral part of the car. And the reason it's there, what it's allowed the designers to do is close off the body and go for a much sleeker side. So we don't have the traditional huge side pods on the car, which you see in turbocharged mid-engine products. So we've got the air intake at the bottom, that's quite discreet, and then this huge scoop, which is doing those 3 things.
How was the journey to sort of thermally controlling this thing? Because that's a lot of energy in a small space, isn't it?
It is a lot, yeah, and that's really where that duality of purpose. So scoops are often there, you can have an additional intake, as you've seen. It's very much Formula One technology, but here it's also, we've widened it to take in that cooling aspect. There's a lot of detail here where we're getting evaporation around the exhaust temperature. So we've got to get a lot of heat out, particularly at low speed as well, where you've got dwell time and heat build-up.
It's got some serious sculpture on it, hasn't it, hey? It's just amazing. It's just really funny how much it's changed to production version. For the better. I mean, there's something about it becoming real surface and real quality. It's elevated it to a
and
space,
I think
isn't it?
In those early models that everyone became so familiar with, so much of this detail wasn't there. And I think it all comes together in a more integrated way now. And it's a very satisfying car to look at. It's just every angle you pick up a different detail each time.
This is all highly cool, really, really cool. I mean, ergonomically as well, obviously we've got half of the roof missing, but the way that allows you to get in and out, I mean, it's kind of effortless, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really easy ingress-egress, a huge cutout for dihedral doors, way more space, clearly, than Valkyrie, which you've sat in before.
Yes.
So a really nice cabin. The design team used this phrase, sort of apex ergonomics, which is about everything to hand, everything in the right place for performance driving. And when you do pull the door down, you find plenty of elbow room for sawing away at the wheel.
So plenty going on up front then, I can see, it's just strange being in an Aston in this format. It's like, but seeing regen and e-power on there, and even the overall seating position, it just feels so right.
Yeah, so and that's really the key, and where the tub was designed from, the sort of anchorage was this hip to heel point. So uniquely, we've got heels at the same height as the hip, even slightly above. So it's a kind of Formula One driving position. It's something we did in Valkyrie, and we wanted to bring into Valhalla as well. So there's no other kind of hypercars that do that. Often the seat is a sort of 20-degree offset to the pedals, so you feel like you sit up and then your feet go down into the pedal box. Here, very much a race position.
Well, on this, the actual tub falls away from where your heels are. I don't think I've ever seen that, actually.
No, so it's exactly, and it falls away to then allow for the seat mountings, so that then you have a flat seating position.
Why has no one done that? It's so obvious when I see it. It's genius.
It's a lot of work.
Is it a lot of work? Okay.
It's funny, you start with something like that, and it drives a whole host of decisions and other implications around the rest of the car. But yeah, it's a very, very cool way to sit, very unique. And I think overwhelmingly, when clients who've sat in the models prior to now, that's the thing that strikes them immediately, because it sets an expectation then for the way the car's going to drive.
I would go so far as to say that's an ergonomic game changer. I'm not sure the camera will pick up on it, but just about in front of this edge of the seat here, the actual bottom of the tub itself falls away. And as a result, you're just part of the car so much more. And as you say, your sort of heels are elevated and totally in line. It's brilliant.
Which, you know, feeds aerodynamics, and that's why race cars have it.
Well, it's got an LMP feel to it. That's what it feels like. It's bonkers.
Exactly right. And then, you know, you got the air rushing over your head into the roof scoop and all of that drama as well. So it really is a kind of very race-focused experience.
So no doubt you'll be able to hear all of the induction noise then up here.
You can.
It's going to make some savage sounds, isn't it?
At full chat when it's opened up, particularly at lower speeds, lower gears.
Fabulous. I'm assuming as well, everything like steering ratios, that's all been developed as part of the overall experience.
Yeah, exactly. So a really nice, sharp, progressive off-center feel with all Aston DNA. And again, you've driven the recent sports cars. You can feel a really sweet, kind of precise front end, and we wanted that despite the kind of E-motors and the torque vectoring that goes on. You can immediately develop relationship with the car and build speed very quickly. You feel at home immediately with the controls, even though you've got clearly, you know, an incredible amount of power under your feet.
But at the same time, we've got your latest infotainment system, so Apple CarPlay, etc. Speaker system, sat navs all in. It's just as it is out of something like a Vanquish.
And again,
package like this.
I mean, Valkyrie went without some of those kind of creature comforts. But yeah, full HMI system from the core. This is obviously, you know, we've further evolved the software and the features in the car. The difference here is obviously we've got a different display screen, which is much racier. And narrowed versus the core range. So you've got a more focused display in through the steering wheel.
So dare I say it, this is kind of like a more daily driver Valkyrie, isn't it? It's like a usable Valkyrie.
Well, exactly. And you know, much of the aero learnings have come from Valkyrie. The seating position is from Valkyrie. Absolutely, it's you know, but it's that bit more usable. It's clearly, and the other thing, because it's an Aston, it rides really well. So it's got a really nice glide to it when not kind of kicking on, but then it's flat in the corners, you know. So we didn't want to build a kind of rough and ready sort of skateboard feel. It had to be, you know, everything, and that's why it's such a sort of technically advanced car. The suspension system itself has to do both of those brand DNA bookends. And
so are you able to sort of separately control the drive mode from the suspension? So if you want it in like sport and road compliant?
Exactly. Yeah. So again, we've carried that forward in our integrated vehicle controller. So yeah, effectively you can, which is quite often the case, people want compliance on the suspension, given the quality of our roads.
Savage drivetrain.
Exactly, and the snappiest drivetrain. And also on here, obviously in race mode, you get the full aero deployment in the wing, which clearly I think owners are going to go for. You might not want the suspension to follow suit.
So reading between the lines then, this might not be the first and last car that will have a DCT in it.
No, I think clearly, you know, with something like this, it's, you know, these are kind of pioneering products, and Valhalla, clearly the job here is to cascade this kind of advanced work down into the core of the range, and dual clutch clearly is something that could play a role for us in the future.
I can't tell you how happy I am. Honestly, just an Aston with a twin clutch box is just euphoric, mate. It's brilliant news. And then I'm expecting as well, from a client point of view, the options on this are fairly endless. You can go through queue and go.
Absolutely.
Bespoke.
You know, it's a limited production car. That tends to be where clients will put their imaginations to work. You can have a very kind of race feel in here, so crushed carbon finishes, or you can go for more herringbone, lighter finishes. There are kind of 2 or 3 really different moods to the interior, but clearly it's a race car, right? So we think people are going to go pretty wild with it, particularly with liveries and the external side of the car as well.
Brilliant.
The fundamentals stack well amidst the F80 and W1 too, with over 1,000 brake horsepower built around a proprietary carbon cell designed by Aston's F1 team, advanced active aero, hybrid drivetrain, and a custom flat plane crank V8. All 3 have the same top speed of 217 miles an hour. All 3 are within tenths of each other's 0 to 60 times, and each have limited production numbers, albeit the Valhalla tips the scales at 999 units. But with that comes something very interesting.
So come on, finally, how much is it all expected to cost?
So kind of ballpark about 850,000.
850, that's actually really ridiculously good, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting because clearly from an aero perspective, combining that with torque vectoring and all of those things, there's nothing else near it at the price point that's doing that level of technology. And you know, we're over 1,000 horsepower and 600 kg of downforce. So you've got kind of hypercar specifications, limited build number, and like all things kind of automotive at the moment, as we move into electrified futures, these are a moment in time.
That won't happen, mate. That won't happen. Don't worry about that.
But they are. They're a moment in time. There are windows to get these engines and so on through legislation before things close around us. So I think it is. It's an incredible amount of technology.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
Into the car.
So I can drive one next year.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll hold you to it.
Look forward to that, mate.